Hey friends, Sean from Draft Therapy here, and on today's review for you, Dark Star crashes, pouring its light into ashes. Barrel-aged Dark Star is an 11% barrel-aged breakfast stout from Big Lake Brewing in Holland, Michigan. Big Lake has been firing on all cylinders lately with their IPAs. They've been putting out a lot of IPAs. They've all been great, and I think that makes it easy to overlook the other styles that Big Lake does. Now, back when I started the channel, I picked up a 4-pack of the regular version of Dark Star, and when I started, I bought way more beer than I needed. I couldn't drink it all or review it all, so I let it sit for way longer than I wanted to, and I randomly decided to give it a try just to see if it still held up. You know, sometimes they don't always taste so great after a while, but despite how old the can was, it stuck in there. It was still delicious. Tasted great. So when I saw that Big Lake was making a barrel-aged version of that beer, I knew there was no chance I was going to miss out. So let's take a look at the label and we'll get this dark goodness into a glass. Fun fact, the final stage in a star's life is just a massive explosion called a supernova, where the star burns as bright as a billion suns and at last it just explodes, leaving no trace. So let's take a look at the label. It is a dark brown matte label. I love that Big Lake's labels are just really basic. Even if they're kind of intricate and they have a lot going on in them, there's still just a few colors. They're really easy to spot on the shelf and say, oh yeah, that's a Big Lake beer. And that's what you want when you're a brewer, when you're a brewery, and you want your beer to be noticed. So this says barrel-aged Dark Star. It's a brown label with white writing. The other Dark Star is a white label, I believe, with dark brown writing, and it has the barrel, and it looks like it's shooting off into space like it's a rocket with some little wings on the bottom. And around on the side here, it says Big Lake Brewing, Holland, Michigan, a barrel-aged breakfast stout made with coffee, cacao, and oats. And don't make fun of me, cacao, that's how it's written, C-A-C-A-O, with oats, 11%, and their slogan, dive in with the craft beer, independent craft beer logo. And this was $4, $4.10 for a single. I bought a couple singles because I couldn't find a 4-pack on the shelf, but that's a good thing for them, right? So you should probably expect about 16 to, if you buy singles, 4 singles, it should be about $16 with the deposit. And there's no canned on date here, but I'm going to say that this has to be pretty fresh. I remember seeing this posted on their Instagram, so this can't be too old, and it's barrel aged, it's 11%, so if it's a little bit older, that should be fine. So let's go ahead and crack this and get a nose out of the can, get the aroma here. It smells very sweet, very sweet. As I kind of sit here and I'm bloodhounding it here, I'm getting a little bit of a chocolate scent. I'm ready to pour it out, pour it into the glass here and get a better kind of, aroma out of the glass. It's pouring out very thick, very dark. I can barely see through it just, into the glass. Sometimes going as it's pouring, you can see through it really well, but it was pretty opaque. So it's really dark. Obviously, the head is about a finger's worth, maybe about a finger, and it's really dark, coffee colored, almost darker than beige, lighter than black. Obviously, it's kind of in between. It looks like a coffee colored head, and it's got a lot of really nice bubbles. After the pour was done, I could see it kind of, the carbonation kind of rising up, and I can still see a really faint streams of carbonation raising up through this. So let's go ahead and lift it up to the light. Super dark. I talk about using these kind of glasses in the bulb. This has like a reddish kind of crimson reddish kind of hue to it, almost borderline purple. Let's get a better nose here out of the glass now that it's in the glass. Smells very sweet. Still getting a lot of chocolate, getting a little faint bourbon scent as well. I wasn't picking that up so much out of the can. But now in the glass, it has a bourbony, almost kind of a black licorice kind of scent to it, which is very, very interesting. Yeah, it's bourbon, chocolate, and like I said, that bourbon kind of is so in there and so mixes well with the chocolate that it is almost like a black licorice. So let's go ahead and I'm ready to dive right into this. So cheers. So it's not as sweet as I was expecting, but that bourbon is really forefront in that. I could taste it throughout. On the beginning, through the middle, and the end, the aftertaste, I am picking up some of that chocolate, some of that cacao, some of that cocoa, whatever you want to call it. I'm picking that up now on the finish, kind of as it lays on your tongue. That's where I'm really picking that part up. But yeah, getting a lot of bourbon up front. Now as I take another sip and I kind of let it sit a little longer, the chocolate's mixing in there a lot more at the beginning, more so on the second drink than it did on the first. On the first, it was a lot of bourbon up front, and then the chocolate kind of sat underneath all that kind of bourbon taste, and it just kind of started to show its colors on the finish. But now that second drink, I'm getting a lot more of it mixed in at the beginning. But it's kind of got two flavors going on. You're getting a lot of the bourbon and you're getting a lot of the chocolate. I'm not getting much. They say here on the can that it's coffee and oats. Let's see if I can even get any. I had to read the thing to see. I had to read the label to see that it had coffee in it. I guess the bitter, I'm picking up a bitterness on the finish on the tail, and I'm going to say that that's probably the coffee taste. So it has that chocolate. Now I'm getting even more of the bourbon and the chocolate mixing together. And I had to, once I kind of refresh myself and see that it's got coffee, I do pick up on the coffee again. It's that kind of coffee bitterness, and I'm really curious again. I got my my thermometer here. I'm really curious to see what the temperature is. I let this sit out for about 20 minutes, and I'm thinking, as this warms up, you want to see it between 50 and 55. I'm letting this kind of sit here. The temperature's finally starting to settle down. It's a hair above 55. It is at 56. I'm going to pull it out here in a second. I'm going to say it's at 55. It's at 55.9, which is, if you can see that, if it hasn't gone up. Yeah, so it's right around a little bit on the warmer side what you want. I would think the cooler it is, the less taste you're going to get. Your taste buds get kind of a little bit numbed. If it's really too cold, you don't get a lot of the flavor out of it. But at 55, it should warm up. You should start to pick out all those flavors. I'm getting this really kind of sweetness on the finish now, and I think it's a little bit more of the bourbon kind of settling in. But I do get bourbon, I do get chocolate, and I do get the kind of coffee astringency at the very end. This isn't, now don't get me wrong, I really like this beer. I think it's a good one, 11%. There's not, even though the bourbon's in there, there's not a lot of booziness to it. There's not like a boozy, bourbony kind of burn that you get sometimes with bourbon barrel-aged stuff. But I think that there's not enough in this that sets it apart, right? There's not enough chocolate, there's not enough of the coffee, there's not enough of the bourbon. There's nothing to really differentiate it. What I would like to see, if it was up to me, a little bit of the coffee to shine through a little bit more. I think the coffee kind of, if there was a little bit more of a coffee flavor in there, I think that would just push it over the edge and make this being a good beer to being a really, really good beer to borderline great beer. Again, don't get me wrong, I don't think there's anything wrong with this beer, but there's so much competition in this space of the bourbon barrel-aged chocolatey coffee beer. The chocolate's starting to come through a little bit more, but I would like to see the coffee come through even more. Again, because there's so much competition in this space, this doesn't really set itself apart. If you had a friend that said, hey, come on over, I got a 4-pack of bourbon barrel-aged Dark Star, let's have a drink, let's have a couple drinks, I wouldn't turn them down, but this isn't something that I would say specifically like, oh, hey, it is April, I can still get KBS, I can still get Sap on Tap, I can still get a few other Michigan beers if I was just looking for Michigan. This doesn't set itself apart like those two do. Whereas, KBS, it has the name pushing it. Sap on Tap is a smaller brewery, but I think that's an excellent bourbon barrel-aged stout. Even like a Black Flame, if you can get that, I think that has the maple piece that's just, it has that rich, velvety, decadent whole flavor going on. This doesn't really have that. It's a good beer, but again, it's not very good. It's not great. It's good. So there's just so much competition, as I've said several times here. I just don't think that this is one that I would seek out amongst all those other really great stouts right now. All right, friends, that has been Barrel-Aged Dark Star from Big Lake Brewing. Have you had this or the regular Dark Star? And what breweries do you like that are known for one, specific style, but they put on a hell of a show in a totally different style? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're down there, if you like Michigan beer, you might want to subscribe and click that bell, because I'm here talking about Michigan beer twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I would hate for you to miss out on your next favorite just because you weren't subscribed and you're not getting those notifications. So until next time, I'm Sean from Draft Therapy. Thanks for stopping by. And remember, drink craft beer, support your local breweries wherever they are, and most importantly, don't forget to treat yourself to a little draft therapy. Thanks for watching. Cheers.